Isaac, is your backpack in here? Do your homework. Go ahead and mute yourself, Amelia. All right. Just give me a couple of minutes here and I'm going to send out invites. We're going to share with my followers, invite some people over to join. What was that? and broadcast to the world. Just send us out on Facebook so people know we're here. All right. It'll take a minute for people to kind of start feeding into the show, but you guys are listening to my husband, Dan Freeman's music. Just his mellow sounds just playing along. Hey, Stacy. And we're going to go ahead and let people file in, and I'm going to go ahead and get started with introducing the show and our guest. So before I bring her up to camera, I just am going to get us started here with our regular intro. You are in the Laughter After Trauma show. My name is Deanna, and I am your host. I am a speaker, educator, and coach that brings light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. And I'm a thriver after intimate partner violence, and my journey led me to find beauty and laughter in healing. And so I believe every one of us is magic and we are all self healers. And with that being said, I bring to you the Laughter After Trauma show, which really just highlights and showcases everyday people who have triumphed in the face of trauma, providing us with hope and awareness, connection, and community, and sharing our laughter after. So, welcome everyone who is watching on the World Wide Web. And for those of us here in the audience, and as people come on in, and if you happen to catch this on the replay, thank you so much for joining the show. I am going to go ahead and bring Amelia up to camera, if I can get this done properly, because even after all this time, sometimes I kind of figure out the buttons. So, and as we wait here, Amelia, to come on camera, I am going to introduce you guys a little bit to Amelia. So, Amelia Starr, A Starr, she is a person who wears many hats, not just this yellow one, even though that yellow one is fabulous. She's a mother, a healthcare professional, a transformational strategist. She has her own podcast show. She is also a published author. So that's a lot of things, right? But what she's passionate about is what we're here to talk about today. And she is passionate about being an advocate for domestic violence survivors. And she works tirelessly to raise awareness of the issues and push for even policy and systemic changes. And she addresses those issues. She has her own personal foundation. Do I have that right? Nonprofit foundation, where she advocates for people and helps bring, again, awareness, but compassion and commitment to serving this community of domestic violence survivors. So I'm not going to sit here and go on and on. I could read the whole bio. I'm not going to read the whole bio because we want to hear from you and we want to hear your story. So before I start all of that, let's just talk just a second about where you are now. So right now you are still a healthcare provider, right? You are still working in that system. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And you have a foundation. Am I saying that right? Or is it a nonprofit? What is,
I have a nonprofit called A Star's Place, and it is a charity that helps women transition after domestic violence, after they've taken the big step.
right. And it is a big step. And I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit as long as you're willing to share. And look, if I get into a spot or a place that you say, nope, we're not going there, fine. You're the VIP. I am the chauffeur. You're sitting in the back seat. So you get to say what happens. But I don't, we don't dwell on that right here. The focus here is really about what you did to get to the laughter after. But I do think people need to hear a little bit of your story to understand where you come from.
Hmm.
And so I find that when I interview people and when I talk with people that are in this type of work, it's always something that led them to it.
Oh, yeah.
So, give us a little bit about your journey, as much or as little as you can share about your journey that got you to the place where you were like, you know what, I need to help other women who have been
Yeah.
where I've been.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, um, obviously, I am a domestic violence survivor. I say survivor because that's what it seems as though the general public recognize me as. However, we're not survivors. We're champions. We're thrivers. We are the majority. Even though when we're going through it, we make it think that we are the minority and we feel alone and think that it's just us. But after you make that big step, you find out that if the person next to you has not been through something similar, they know someone who has.
Mhm.
So, my personal experience, gosh, let's go back to the womb. Let's start there.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I have been a champion even before birth. So, my name, A Star, Amelia Starr, is my birth name for those of you who think it's, some fictitious whatever. And I say that with a grain of salt because my mother nor father had the last name Starr. Want to know more about that? You'll have to read the bio in my book. However, many, many, many years, I was ashamed of that name. And I didn't go by my last name. I made up all kinds of things. And I think even marriage had something to do with me getting rid of that name.
Mm,
We'll touch on that in a little bit as well. But the reason why I say the womb is because my mother was my father's prostitute.
oh, that
Should
sounds.
I say my dad was my mom's pimp?
Mhm.
So we'll go back 40 plus some years. And in Brooklyn, New York, uh, there was abuse even before I was born.
Mhm.
For those of us who are mothers, we know how dreadfully painful childbirth is. Imagine doing it with three broken ribs. So that was my interest into this grand world that we live in, right? And you think, well, you don't know anything about that. And I don't know how genetics play a part in being a healthcare provider. I try to wrap my mind around the mental of it all.
Mhm.
But even though I'm supposed to be a statistic, and I guess I am in some sort of way, I've been through many seemingly repeat um, domestic violence situations.
Mhm.
What I understand is that when you don't heal, you attract the same thing.
Mhm.
I don't blame that on my past of my mother or my father. I just know many times you repeat what you see or what you've been around. With that being said, certain things were accepted in the generation that I grew up with. Certain things such as the woman's supposed to cook, clean, and have babies, and the man is supposed to take care of the house. The woman's supposed to be submissive. You do what you're told. You're not allowed to have an opinion. And if so, well, then you can get punished for that. In my case, that punishment was every type of abuse you can think of, from sexual to verbal to physical. financial, emotional, whatever you can name. I'm sure I can testify to having been through it. But again, we're not going to dwell on that because being that star that my mother and father named me, or maybe just my mom, we really don't know the truth there. But God has allowed me to shine bright. So after I got out of this 17-year marriage with my life, by the grace of God, I was in a shelter. And what I found is that we're more alike than we are different. Domestic violence knows no age, no skin color, no financial background. It hits like the flu or COVID or whatever pandemic or epidemic that is going on that is in the news, but yet you don't see that as an epidemic. And so while I was in that shelter, they give you things, So you go through this long intake process. You walk down this long hall. It's like you're on your way to death row or something. I was assume,
Mm-hmm.
how the movies tell it. And then you tell everything. You're so desperate, you're so vulnerable. They ask so many questions. You feel worthless and useless and insignificant. And then they give you stuff. Here's your lot of whatever. You're gonna have some deodorant, you're gonna have some socks, some toiletries. Well, if you look at me, if you haven't noticed, honey, I'm a 5 foot 11 inch, maybe 12, maybe 11 and a half, black woman. Okay, so I have eczema on my skin. I'm almost 200 pounds. Should I say that? But it's true. And so, what fits the petite white woman, which is really what the shelters are giving, right? It doesn't work for me. So my size 11 foot, those one size fit all, baby, they don't fit Amelia. You know what I mean? When you give me those extra large bloomers, underwear, panties, whatever you want to call them, they don't fit me. And I'm not a hippie woman. Don't even get into the skincare. You're giving me Vaseline, intensive care lotion. No disrespect to the name brands, but honey, I need some Eucerin or something thick. I have eczema. I need something that's going to take care of my skin. So not only did I lose my comforts of quote unquote home, my dignity was continuing to circle around the drain as I look at this worthless junk they give me, but smile and say thank you because what else do I have? God allowed me to get out of there. Obviously, being in the healthcare profession, you're in demand. So I'll always be able to make money for myself as long as someone's not stopping me from doing it through abuse. So once in the shelter, I had that freedom. And once I was able to get on my feet, I decided, you know what? No woman deserves to feel the way that I felt. You're already at your lowest. You should not be circling the drain when you're in a place reaching out for help. And that's why I birthed A Star's Place. We give toiletries, not in a bag, but we allow you to shop. Oh, do you use Eucerin? Do you use Degree, Mitchum? What do you use? What hair products do you use? Because we want to give you what you can use, what you're used to. I
Mm-hmm.
believe many times people give out of ignorance and they've checked that box, I've donated, right? But if what you've donated is useless, you might as well keep it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I do what I do.
I love that. So, in this process, I think that, for me, I was in an 18-year marriage, abusive marriage. I did not have to go through the shelter
Hmm.
situation. Um, I mean, mostly because I'm not the one who ended the relationship, that's a whole different story. um, but it's like you said, when you don't heal, you repeat. But you're also, and this is something I heard and I was picking up on from you, is that you're also groomed, not on purpose. We don't, we do the best we can as parents, but you're groomed to accept certain behaviors, and you don't know that those behaviors are not normal until you're at an age where you can tell that this is not normal. And then it takes you a while to kind of pull away from that and start figuring out, well, what is acceptable? How do I draw boundaries? How am I able to, create this space for myself when you don't know it, you've never had it, you don't know what it looks like. But
Right.
I think a thing that you're bringing up here too is this thing that has to do with inclusion, because people don't people don't think that far. It's like you said, you buy stuff and you think you're doing something. But if that stuff doesn't serve someone the way it's intended to, then it's almost like you didn't do it at all. Or even more, it's a little bit of a it's a little bit of a gut punch
Indeed.
because you're here at your lowest place, like you said, and you don't have just the basics that you need for you. You have basics that somebody else might be using, but you don't have the basics that you need for you. And it's degrading. It's degrading to be in that situation. Now, I know that the place that I went to, it was a shelter as well. I didn't go through what you went through, so I don't know that road, although I've heard it quite a few times here. But the other part of that is something else that you brought up, and that is when you finally have the courage to face that this is what's been going on and you have to stop it, when you finally have that courage to do that, because my person didn't just leave and go away from, you know what I mean? He left and I was able to kind of keep the house, but I had to get put things put in place because he kept coming back. I mean, you know, but then you have to go through, like you said, you have to go through all the questions, all the stories, all the things you need to document what you've been through in order to get protection that you need. And they don't make it easy. And not only do they don't make it easy, you're in such a raw place.
Absolutely.
So just for your foundation with the transitioning. So how do people shop? How do people utilize that? How do they get cards? Do you take them shopping? How does that work for your organization?
No, we don't take them shopping. We just had our grand opening in January and we had a
Right.
gala. So, with the gala, we had a table set up with all of the things that wonderful people donated off of an Amazon wish list.
Oh,
So,
okay.
do you like white socks or black socks or green socks or yellow socks and so we had some of the survivors give their input.
Hmm.
What would you like? So we can serve you. And then we didn't hand this to this person and that to that person. We gave them an empty bag and allowed them to go shopping for themselves.
I love
You know,
that.
for every type of toiletry you can think of that a female would need. And so after the gala, we have our little review, and the board has decided most women have children. So now we've added children's toiletries too as well. Kids like bubble baths. If they've been taking a bubble bath every night at home, now their whole life has been turned upside down because they're forced to move to be safe. Can't they have that one little comfort? It maybe it's only $2 or $3, but when you're homeless, that $2 or $3 is 2 or 3 thousand. So little things like that, or little girls want nail polish, or little boys maybe they want something to play with in the tub, or a certain washcloth. Right? Little kids have their own little thing, so we've added that now,
I love
which
it.
I'm super excited about. But I would
I
like to,
love.
talk, if you don't mind, about the grooming.
Yeah,
And
go for it.
so even though like we're groomed unconsciously, I guess, also those that are narcissistic and abusers, they seek us out as well. They seek out the weak. They seek you out. They see that you have low self esteem. They see that you come from a broken place and they take full advantage of that.
Hmm.
So, also, as a transformation coach and the things that I do outside of healthcare, I help build women up so you can rebuild. And the number one thing you have to remember is you're significant. Because all the days, months, weeks, whatever it is that you've been through this abuse, you've been torn down and told you're nothing. You're insignificant. Nobody cares.
Hmm.
And we do care. More of us care than don't.
Hmm.
I just wanted to bring that up.
And I agree. And and it's an interesting dynamic
Mhm.
because it's not just being groomed as when you're growing up, which I find just through the work I'm doing, the people I help, and shows like this where I see this trend of what we have in common, what's acceptable, like, oh, you're in a marriage, you stay in a marriage, that's the way it is, and what, your fundamental beliefs, right? And they do make you stick with something longer than maybe you should or maybe you needed to. But then the flip side is that grooming you get when you're in an abusive relationship. And it's all really complex trauma. And it doesn't just come from childhood, although complex trauma is very common from childhood. It just is a long-term situation. So when you're in a 17-year abusive relationship and over you have begun to learn to be small or not be yourself or walk on eggshells so that you just don't rock the boat, because that's easier than dealing with the flip side. It's hard for people who haven't been there to understand why you stay in that. It's gradual, and it
Mhm.
just keeps taking these little pieces and little pieces and little pieces until you actually don't know anymore. You're not you.
That's so
So
true.
so that is it. You'd be surprised. Like, I was in a marriage for 18 years. You were in a marriage for 17 years. I have a sister over 10 years. I have another sister 17 years. It's systemic,
Yeah.
you know, and it's generational. And the way you break that is what you're doing or what I'm doing. You stop it for yourself, but then you start taking action in the opposite direction to educate people, to educate your children, to make sure they understand that they do not have to ever, not even for 5 minutes, accept behavior that is abusive.
Right. That's
So let me ask you that question. So, as a mom, how did you, because I know for me, I feel like there was some abuse that happened afterwards with my children. And I feel like it was partially this dynamic of what I modeled as, what you accept. I'm sorry. And so I've had conversations with them about this because they're grown now, but conversations so that I can say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's get real honest. I didn't do it perfectly, but I don't want you to fall into that trap. And already some of that has happened, right? But let's not fall into that trap, and let's just make real sure that the grandkids
mm,
understand that they have anything they want in front of them and they don't have to accept things that cross their personal boundaries. So how have you had conversations with your kids about this? How has that impacted the way you've raised your kids or things you've done just in that realm as a mom?
it impacts me in the way that I raise them by showing them. We've been through, oh my God, months and months and months and months of therapy. So now I'm kind of working on being that example. You know what it's like not to do. I mean, you know what not to do. So let me show you what to do. Let me show you how it is possible. Let me show you that you can. Let me take back my strength and show you you are enough, period. You are enough. You are not someone to be controlled or demeaned or degraded. You're better than that. You show people how to treat you. When you accept it that second time, you've made it okay. And
Mm,
so I'm very firm on never again, never again.
mhm,
And as a survivor, a champion, we usually go back. But we go back because of the comforts. There's not because of love. It's because of
Mhm.
what we couldn't get or we don't think we can get. We don't have the confidence to believe it's possible because you'll never make it without me. Nobody's gonna love you more than I do. You're not. You think you're gonna? Who's gonna take you with all these kids? You hear it all, right? But the truth is, they're all lies. And so I make sure to repeat the lies and reinforce their lies. When you hear that,
Mhm.
run. Somebody's trying to control you because you can. Anyone that's telling you you can't, they're lying. What's in it for
So
them?
I right. And so I had a psychologist on here, and she's a therapist and she works with trauma. And one of the things she said was, red flags don't look like red flags when they are comfortable.
Mhm.
When red flags are all you know, they don't look like red flags. So, you know, being able to come from the place where you are, even though I wouldn't say I want somebody to go through this so they know what that looks like. No, it's about being able to come from where you are and share this with your children so that so they know what it looks like without having to experience it, you know, because there's some things obviously that you might want to learn from experience. Hey, Monica. And then there are some things that you don't want to learn from experience. You want to learn from other people's experiences. Um, and this is one of those things, so when you're able to give that to your kids, I feel like that's one of those legacy things that you're able to perpetuate something. You're breaking a cycle and
Absolutely.
perpetuating something new. The other thing that I've noticed, and this is just me, is that people who have experienced sexual abuse will cycle into domestic abuse. And then their children will cycle into domestic abuse and possibly sexual abuse. And then their kids might experience sexual abuse and then those two things are very interconnected. And so I didn't experience this when I was a child, but there was a certain level of fundamental raising that just allowed for certain behaviors, like you said, head of household and the way you look at marriage and all of these things that kind of played into me marrying young and staying inside of a marriage that I shouldn't have stayed in. But then the flip side of those cycles is after the marriage ended, trusting people I shouldn't have trusted still. And they they manipulated and preyed on my children. And so that put my children at risk. And then, of course, created this cycle of me feeling guilty that I didn't protect my children. And so and that could have easily led to different abusive relationships in their life. And so you can see where these things just keep rolling generation after generation unless you take a stand, you learn, you communicate this openly with your children. Communication is like the biggest part of educating this, and then allowing that to be educated to the next generation as well, so that the cycles are broken and that this doesn't continue to happen. So
Absolutely.
I don't know if you've ever like participated in any of the classes, but the Stewards of Children class is such an amazing class. It's a Darkness to Light. It's a free class. You can take it online or you can take it, in person. Now, this is about child sexual abuse, but like I said, they wind up going hand in hand. And so I'm working with a children's advocacy center with that, but it is something I'm just passionate about because I know for me the mom guilt is heavy, and I can't speak for you, but I can't imagine that you have no guilt, basically knowing that your children were exposed to some of this behavior and this abuse,
You
and
know,
so
I do, but I believe that when you don't know better, you can't be held responsible for doing better. And I sincerely did not know better. And once I found out, I was out of there. I'm never going back. So I don't know if it will come in the future. Hopefully not, because of the healing process. Sometimes you just haven't dug up enough. But as of right now, we went through it together, and my God, we're a team. They
Love
are
that.
children, but they're my rock. And they understand that I live and breathe them. The abuse that happened to me, that happened to them, wasn't at my hands. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I'm getting punched and you're getting kicked, we're both kind of the same thing. So I can't protect you when I'm getting, and they saw that. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? So I just thank God that the situation that I went through wasn't a he say, she say, like some mom and well, some people have where, oh, she did this, oh, she's just mad, oh, he did that, or but they witnessed it. And I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
it's just my mental intake and how I perceive it, but you can't lie to them. They were there. They saw it. They know. And with that, going back to my childhood, the things that I know that I witnessed from my mom, it wasn't, all peaches and cream as they say, but I learned at a young age to learn from her. And now when we talk about genetics, I believe that's part of it as well, because what my mom did wrong, what I wish she would have done is what I do. I What she done wrong is what I learned from. Right. So, for example, I'll use something not even as heavy as the topic we're talking about. My mom didn't get a driver's license. I got mine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So even her not doing motivated me to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to say something heavy, my mom was an addict. Never got high or smoked even a cigarette. So sometimes you can change the next generation by inspiring them not to be like you.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that communication comes in, because my mom talked to me as if I was her best friend and she was sure mine. So that's the communication that I have with my children. And so when we go to counseling, we can dish out all of it. What did I want to do? I didn't have the courage to do. I'm sorry I didn't. But when God gave me that strength, I did it, and I didn't do it and leave you in it. I took you,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all in the same, I hate to say gang. Isn't that like a song or something? I don't know, some slogan. But we're all part of the same. I
Yeah.
didn't bring you here for you to be hurt. I didn't bring you here for you to see the meanness and the evil in your home. I want you to be safe. And I'm going to do everything I can to provide that safe space for you. And I believe that that's what they believe. That's what
Yes.
we say anyway.
And I think it's important that you can say, look, I was sorry that you had to be in it with me, you know, but when I'm getting out of it, I'm pulling you out with me as well. I also picked up something in there that you were saying too, that you and your mom were able to communicate openly. So, as much as there were the things you didn't want, there was still that communication. And it looks like that's one positive thing you can take that you moved right into your relationship with your children was, if nothing else, we're going to do this together as a team and we're going to talk about it, you know?
Oh,
So,
definitely.
that's a really key, I feel like a key thing that, one of my things is, how do you find gratitude in even the bad situations? And I've said this before, it's easy to be grateful for the things that are going right and the things that are going well. We can do that. It's not a big job. But how do you appreciate or find gratitude in something that went terribly wrong? And you're not going to find it in the moment. Nobody's asking you to go, "Oh, I'm getting beat up and I need to be grateful. Let me think how I'm going to be, no, that's not what we're saying. But what we are saying is that as you come through the things that you have dealt with, especially trauma, how can you look back on that and say, okay, well, because of that, there is this.
Mm.
And it wouldn't exist had I not gone through that. And I know, like, some people like to say, oh, there's a reason for everything. And personally am not a person who kind of buys into everything happens for a reason. I don't buy into that. My God is not going to give me this thing and that thing, and some form of torture, and then say, oh, I'm just, No, with bad things, God cannot be tested. That's what I believe. And so, but I do believe that unforeseen occurrences, they just happen. Things happen. There are bad people in the world. While I believe that the majority of people are good people or they want to be good people, they aren't. Not everybody is. So, when you are faced with those things, though, that you confront and those things that happen, it is about, I think, how you choose to move forward is the way you can find gratitude in it. So, is there something that you look back at and you go, okay, well, all of this crap happened. And here are some things that I think I can be grateful for now, knowing what I know now?
My God, everything, everything. Oh my God, everything. As far as domestic violence and that journey that I went through, or that part of my journey, you know, I do believe everything happens for a reason. Ooh, can I disagree with you on your show?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can,
But
that's the beauty of it. Absolutely. Tell me why. Convince me.
I'm not going to try to do that. But I believe that everything happens for a reason. And I'm giving no free passes here. Wrong is wrong, evil is evil. And I think that I know that allowed me to be even more grateful for the things that I have. Okay?
Hmm.
Evil, evil, evil. Ooh. Evil wants to destroy, to kill, to demean, right? Evil, just pure evil. But if you haven't had someone trying to destroy you, how do you know how to fight? How do you know what it's like to go through so you can appreciate what you have? Hmm. So we all, I'm grateful for food, for clothes, for shelter. It's almost like cliche. But what about I'm grateful I'm not like you? What about I'm grateful I don't have that perspective? What about I'm grateful that I'm not vindictive and evil? That I have a soul and a heart? That I do want to contribute and give back? That I'm not selfish? Those are the things that it's taught me. I think you have to be a miserable person to portray pain on someone else. I feel bad for you. I don't give you a pass. You're not welcome back. But I feel bad for you. And I'm grateful that that's not my portion. I'm grateful that I don't have to live in that misery, even though you tried to project it on me. So every day I can look in the mirror, and even though I was named A Starr after nobody, I can proudly say, good morning, A Starr. Shine bright. Today's your day. Because I know what it's like to not want to look in that mirror. I know what it's like to have someone tell me you're worthless. I know what it's like for someone to try to dim that light. So I'm grateful that I don't have that shade per se anymore. So to me, that's significant because before that, before I even met the perpetrator, I still was self conscious about my name and who I am and my identity. After, oh, I know who I am. I'm
Hmm.
proud of who I am. And I'm always working to be better.
Hmm. So, so again, I think we're saying the same things. We just come at it differently. I think you found reason in what you went through.
Mhm.
I don't know that everyone has to go through such dramatic things to learn how to fight, but the more you do, the more trials, let's just face it, none of us escape life right now. Nobody, I don't know anybody who escapes life who hasn't experienced trauma.
Mhm.
Period. On whatever level, whatever level. You might not be able to be diagnosed with PTSD, but you still experience traumas. And I don't, like, so what I'm saying is I don't feel like it's purposefully put on you, but I do think that we're allowed to go through things and things are put in front of us and we prove ourselves. And when we do that, we build our own self confidence, we build our own self esteem, and it teaches us who we are. So I
Yes.
do think we go through the things and we learn and it teaches us. But I don't necessarily think that it's given to us by the divinity. Now, there's
No.
a lot of things we do that we bring upon ourselves, and sometimes that is just like a karmic reaction. Hey, Monica. But I don't, and again, I'm not, I think semantics, I think potato, potato, right? I think ultimately at the end, we're kind of saying similar things is that even when you are presented with those things, it changes you, it makes you stronger, it makes you a better person, it makes you realize the things that you can be grateful for that maybe you took for granted before. And that happens too. But
Absolutely. I agree. Also, you know what? It also makes you like grateful that unfortunately some people don't survive, right? Some people, whether it's not surviving physically or whether they've went into this downward spiral.
mhm,
So it makes you grateful for that too. You know, that you
right,
had that strength or was able to pull from someone with that strength to be able to keep yourself out of that dark hole.
right.
Because some people go there. So I agree with you. We're saying the same thing.
I do. I think we just say things same but different. I just don't like the idea of saying, that it was somehow caused by
No,
our creator.
I
That's
don't.
I guess when people say things happen for a reason, there's like some underlying note sometimes that I get, and maybe that's just me. And so that's why I'm
Hey,
like, nope, I'm not going there. Hey, Monica, you
hey,
had something you
Ian.
wanted to add? Hey,
Yeah, I mean,
do you want to come on
I
camera?
love. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can. Hold on, baby. Okay.
Yeah, let me just takes me a second. My phone is a little slow today, but at least I'm not glitching. It's not
Okay.
glitching. So fireside. Shh, shh, shh.
Hey, sweetie. So,
Hey.
couple things. Hey, darling. Love what Amelia had to say, and I agree with her 500%. I personally do. I'm a believer, you know that.
Mhm.
And I believe that everything happens for a reason. Whether God is using the experience to be a bridge, to take us on the next part of our journey, to build character, to bring wisdom, whatever it is. I personally, I do. I think that everything happens for a season or reason. And it's just how we choose to look at it when it does happen. And like in listening to her, she has such an amazing, amazing story. But God foresaw what a beacon of light that she was going to be to the world. But just like God saw it, the enemy saw it as well. So if he can bring despondency, and I think sometimes people forget that his job is based on the Bible in biblical terms is to steal, kill, and destroy. So if he can steal her spirit, steal her drive, steal her passion, steal her energy, steal, her quest for life, he will attempt to do that. But he failed. And he failed because God has a calling and a purpose on her life. She's walking in that. She knows her power. She knows her strength, and she's out here just killing it. So I just wanted to kind of comment on that. I hear ya, but I do think that when even Deanna, and again, I don't want to get woo woo, because I'm not trying to turn this into some type of Bible study. But it is. I do think that things happen in our lives to get us to the next, even sometimes when it's painful things and not necessarily something that we invited or that we drew into our lives, but sometimes it's part of our journey. And even the darkness can be part of our journey to carry us to the light. So I'll be quiet with that.
Well, no. So Monica, and I think again, I think we say similar things. I just don't think. I think it's coming from a place of evil, right? Like you said, the enemy. I think it's coming from a
Mm-hmm.
place of Satan, a satanic, whoever you believe, devil, whatever. But I think it's coming from that place. I think you're allowed to go through it because we are all refined by fire. Okay. So, but I don't think the test comes
Absolutely.
from God. I just think that He allows it because He knows our strengths. And I do for 100%. certainty believe that we are all created for a purpose. We are all designed for
Absolutely.
greatness and a purpose. And
Absolutely.
sometimes
Yep.
maybe we're not seeing
Absolutely.
that, and things kind of keep coming back to us and coming back to us until we see it, until we learn it. We have to learn the lessons, we have to learn the
Absolutely.
things, or we have to get that strength and that endurance. So I do think we're kind of saying the same thing. I think somewhere in the back of my mind, when somebody
Yeah.
says that, it automatically makes me think that God is giving that to you. And I don't think God is
Yeah, because
giving it
it
to you.
can
I
have a
think
little
He's
bit of a
allowing
negative
you to go
connotation where,
I think he's allowing you
yeah,
to go through it because he knows you can. He's not going to take you to something that you cannot endure. So, so
yeah,
that I think that kind of is the difference. But I think it's probably we're saying the same
yeah.
things. Just I might just have a backwards brain, whatever. you know, but I do definitely agree that that there is a purpose. We all are here and we all have a purpose. And most of us we we know and we follow that when we're young, and then we start
Uh-huh.
being taught that this is how you do things and this is the way you got to do it, and you got to get up and you got to go to work and you got to do this and you're going to have married and have a kid and and then all of a sudden somewhere in there you forgot the purpose, the thing that lights you on fire. And then you have something like this
Yeah.
happen. You have a trial and you
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
oh, I found this fire. I found that fire again. And it
Yeah.
wakes you up.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, now
Yeah.
now I know. Now I know. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Amelia, because you keep like going to say something and then
No,
you
I'm
keep
just
jumping.
agreeing. I'm like, yes.
Yes. So Amelia, Monica, Amelia, now you'll know each other.
Hey,
Um
Amelia.
so yeah, so I
I'm
do
gonna be
kind of think
quiet.
we
That's all I wanted to say,
I
Deanna. I'll be
appreciate
quiet so you guys can finish the show. Okay.
oh, that's fine. I appreciate the ad. Thanks for jumping up, Monica. So, and that's the thing. So, at the end of the day, regardless of if you agree, you disagree, whatever, there's nobody who can deny that when you go through trials, you go through tribulations, you go through trauma, and you choose to heal, you choose to get yourself out of that situation, you choose to make your situation better, whether it's because you looked at your parents or you looked at this situation and you decided it wasn't going to be for you, whether you've decided inside of a situation where you woke up and said, no more, this is enough, and I don't deserve this, no matter where it comes from. I do believe that all of us have the strength and the ability to make that choice. And so I want people here that are listening to go, okay, I don't need to be in fear regardless of how it goes. I had somebody on this show who literally, because of the way her abuse was happening and her husband changing his identity, getting her fake IDs, stealing people's, I mean, it was a crazy criminal ring that was going on. And for her to escape, she literally used a fake ID and left him in public in the airport because she knew he could make a scene because he would have gotten arrested. And she
Mm.
got on a different plane and went to California where he didn't know she was going and he didn't know what name it was under. So,
Mm.
you know, people go through some crazy things and just want everyone to know that you have what you need already inside of you. So if you find yourself in that situation, reach out. Like I don't care. I'm not the people who can extract you, but I will find the people who can extract you in your area and help. I will help. I'm sure Amelia feels the same way. Reach out. Don't be afraid to take that first step if you find yourself in that kind of situation. But if your situation isn't that dramatic, and you're still struggling to heal from trauma, you still have what you need inside of you. Just ask for the help. The help is out there. It's there. So, Amelia, I would like, because we're kind of getting down to the end here, to hear what would be, one or two key points, takeaways, something that you want people who, when they leave this show, to go home and say, um, I want to remember this. I want you to remember this when we what we talked about. Hey Brian, you had something you wanted to add? Thanks for coming up here.
Oh,
You muted. Okay, there you go.
yeah. Um,
Hey, welcome.
Hi. Um, I just literally came on here. Um, yeah. Um, I apologize if my voice is a little bit off, but I've been dealing with a little bit of emotion
Okay.
from something at home.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I totally agree with the whole laughter after trauma thing. Um, And I'm sure with what I dealt with at home tonight, there'll be a little bit of laughter from that later on. But I do sometimes feel a little bit traumatized in a sense because of feeling like I get only get criticized for what I do wrong, and not to talk down about people. I want to be very careful about what I say publicly, but um, but there's, as you know, Deanna, there are these stigmas about what I deal with my autism, and so the, there are things that people may perceive of me that isn't really what it it is. It looks one way, but it really mean another way, and so that's not to say that I am always right all the time, but it is to say that I do have greater senses than what people might think. So this is actually me reaching out right now and saying I'm dealing with something, and um, it's not always as great as my shows are on here or what I do on social media. And so, and I know you're just meeting me, Amelia, but um, I'm just being my raw and authentic self at the moment. So thank you for listening.
Okay. Well, Ryan, I want to say a couple of things to you. One thing I want to say is I always admire, and I say this when you come here, I always admire your courage to get up and speak and be real and say what's on your heart. I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage for someone who feels like sometimes they might be, stigmatized or maybe even, I don't know what you want to call it, where people just feel where you feel like people think less of you. And what I want to say to you is that I understand, and I know people here understand, and I know the people who are listening on on the World Wide Web understand that it takes a tremendous amount of courage to show up when the energy and the amount of effort it takes might be different than somebody else's effort, but you do it anyway, and you are always authentic and you're always real. And I think it's also important that you brought up that it's not always what it looks like on the surface. You do your shows, you do your social media, I know you do some clubhouse things, and it's not always, rainbows and butterflies, and I get that. So what I'm going to do right now, Brian, is I'm going to send out some really good vibes for you. We'll say some prayers for you, and just hope and pray that you move past what you just went through today. And I know you will. I know you will. Um, and like you said, you will find that laughter after. Take some time, you can't, it just, trauma comes up. And this is something else I've always said. Trauma comes up in phases, you know, and you experience things, and then you go through a different phase in your life, or some kind of change, or something happens, that trauma just rears its head again, and it'll rear its head again and again. But each time, because of the work you've done, it gets a little bit easier to process through it. just doesn't go away. Healing is not a one and done thing. It's a journey. It's an adventure. I like to call it an adventure. You turn the next corner and something smacks you in the face, and you're like, oh, dang, look at that. So I know, Brian, that you will find that too. So just know that our thoughts are with you. Um, Amelia, I wanted to get back to just those last few thoughts, unless you had anything else you wanted to add, but get back to those last few thoughts and those key takeaways that you might want to share with us, that we've talked about today, that you might want to say, hey, you know what? Go home with this. If you don't remember anything else, go home with this.
Well, I want to speak to three types of people, right? So for the abuser, you can do better. You can change. Get help. For the champion, that survivor out there, you're not alone. You're significant and you are enough. Fear less. Break the silence. Live life. Life is not meant to be lived in fear. And the third group is just a community. Maybe you're not the abuser. Maybe you're not the surviving champion. But I know you know someone that is or has been. So for you, I want you to remember you can make a difference. This is a epidemic. There are billions of people across the world that is either experienced domestic violence, is experiencing domestic violence, or will experience domestic violence. Now, as it's called, intimate partner violence. What can I do, you ask? It doesn't always involve money. Yes, donate to someone that you trust and you know is going to help the survivors. That the majority of the money is not going in the pocket and running the company and things of that nature. What can you do? There's all types of fundraisers. There's walks, there's runs. Even just talking about it, being that listening ear for someone, bring awareness in your community. It should not be a taboo topic. How's the next generation going to learn if they don't even know it exists? And those are the final thoughts I'd like to leave you with. Thank you so much, Deanna.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love those final thoughts because it really does pull everyone. It pulls everyone into the conversation, into the solution. And
Mm-hmm.
I do think that, like you said, it takes the entire community. And one of the things I can say that impacted me the most was knowing that when the decision was made, that I had people that I knew would be in my corner. It's important. So if you're in the community and you even if you know someone like you said, just be there. Be there for when they're ready,
Mm-hmm.
because there will come a time and they're going to need you. Well, here's the thing, at the end of all of my shows, Amelia, I like to tell my guests that I see you and you are beautiful. 100% believe that. I have never met a person on here that I didn't believe that of, but I also believe that of a lot because I think innately people are good. But I do really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your story, and just, shining some light, being your star, being a star, being a star. I love it. I feel like there's so many things you can do with that name. I know you do. So I appreciate it. And I thank you for being here with us and sharing.
I'm
Okay.
honored. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. It is a privilege.
Thank you. And listen, shout out some places where people can find you. And we'll put this in the show notes too when I get all of the editing done. But tell us where they can find you. Where is your podcast? What's the name of your podcast? So we can pull people in to hear more about this.
Absolutely. So, my podcast is The Many Facets of a Star. And my last name is two R's, Starr. So, Facets of a Star. I'm sorry, my Instagram is Facets of a Star. My podcast is Purifying Truths. and it is being revamped right now. We will come back fresh, brand new for season 3 beginning in May. So stay tuned. Certainly, you can listen to previous shows everywhere that podcasts are, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, put in Purifying Truths and you'll hear it. And it's actually where I'm shining a light on others that illuminate the world. And we're transitioning into shining a light on those that illuminate the world by helping those going through and rebuilding from domestic violence. So it's going to
Amazing.
be even better. If you like what you hear, please, please, please come and listen in May. I'm also a published author, and anywhere you can get your books, Walmart, Target, Amazon. My book is called The Many Facets of a Starr, Purifying Truths. See, I brought that up because the podcast Purifying Truths, the Instagram Facets of a Starr, put it together, you got the bio.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I did see that in your bio here, so I'm definitely going to go check out the book because I love books, and I probably consume about 3 or 4 books a month, and I'm always taking them in. So I just devour stuff. I love reading. I love learning. I love fiction as well. We have a book club, so whatever.
Ooh.
I love it. So,
Oh,
yeah. So again, like I appreciate it. You guys go follow her, find her podcast. I know when it comes to Apple Podcasts, that's where you want to go ahead and subscribe and leave your reviews. Do that on Spotify. Some of the big ones. It's really important and so helpful that you go look at these podcasts and leave a review. Mine's on there too. So you can do that for me as well. But I just want you guys to know that that's the kind of support. Here's another way of free support because what she's doing and the work she's doing, or the work I'm doing, or the work Monica does, when we go out there, we're doing all of this stuff. This doesn't cost you a penny, but if you support us, it allows us to go back and bring stuff in, maybe get sponsors, maybe get things going so that we're able to put more into this particular effort. So support us. Go out there, follow, subscribe to her podcast, and leave a nice review. All right. So I think that's it. I think that's a wrap, unless anybody else needed to say anything. I see Amy popped in here. Faraz, people are coming in as we're ending the show. You guys go back and listen to the replay. I'm going to publish it up right quick on here. You can listen to the replays here and then also over on my YouTube channel, Laughter After Trauma. Otherwise, the podcast, we'll edit it, post production, get some things tweaked, and I'll publish it up to the podcast in a few days. Okay? All right. Like I said, I love to say it. I see you and you're beautiful, and I do believe that. I'm going to pull you off a camera and I'm going to play some music from my husband and talk us right on out of this show. And we will see you guys next week where I have yet another amazing guest coming to chat with you. All right. So, here, just to let you know, you have been listening to the Laughter After Trauma show. I am Deanna, your coach that leads you to your laughter after. I see you. You're beautiful. So until next time, love each other, stay connected, shine on. Bye, y'all.